All right, today we have Erica Mulholland. Oh my goodness, Hall of Fame soccer player, writes books, trains athletes for soccer, speed training, three-time All-American. I could go on and on, but thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Soccer coach and football coach collide here. That was the one I played 4 sports in high school. That was the one sport I never touched was soccer. 6'5", 260-pound man, you don't play soccer. You're a football player. Never touch soccer.
That's okay. I think we can learn a lot from coaches in other sports, and I've had a few football coaches on my podcast as well.
Yep.
And I think when we're talking about athlete development, I mean, we can learn so much from any sport and just different coaching styles and how they relate to their athletes. So that's been really fun. And I'm a huge football fan. I used to not like watching it, and now I watch every single game of the NFL.
Oh, see, there you go. There you go.
Yeah.
I've gotten better about watching soccer. Growing up, didn't watch it. Then as you get older, you're like, I'm going to watch this or that, or, but it was one of those things. Being a small town, soccer wasn't the number one. It was like football, basketball, baseball. Soccer took a step back. But as I got coaching and I'm getting older, you're watching, and like you said, training athletes, you have to train each athlete the same and different at the same time. And that's what I learned this summer. I took it upon myself to be like the speed coach in the summer for sports. And one of them was for soccer. And I realized, okay, how is this different than football? How is this different than basketball? Took that feed the cats approach and did all that stuff. And their head coach looked at it and said, I kind of like this. And I was like, yeah, you don't need to run a lap around the track. You don't need to run a lap around the field. Like, just let's warm up like this, do drills like this. I was only out there for like a half hour. And now he's kind of doing it with this weight room stuff now. So it's kind of picked up a little bit of, for injury purposes. I said, that's the big thing here is injuries with athletes and stuff. And he was like, yeah, I kind of see what you're going with this.
That's amazing. I think with the speed, it's just so cool to microdose it within warm up, and coaches tend to really like that approach because it doesn't take away from what they have to do at football or soccer practice, and their athletes aren't sore or tired from the warm up. They're actually really energized and feeling great, and while at the same time they're getting a good speed adaptation over time. So yeah, I think the feed the cats approach is just so easy to implement if you are a team coach or even performance coach, but it's definitely something you have to stick with and do over several months to really see just drastic results. But it is a very powerful program and way of doing it that it's really getting a lot of team coaches on board.
Right. Now, I kind of jumped the gun there. Let's talk about you. What's the backstory here? We said played soccer, went to college, played soccer. If people read your book, which I have, which is right here, I brought it just for the occasion. He talks about it in there. So like what got into sports, why soccer, and then kind of what led to like training after that.
It's so weird telling my story because I haven't told it in a while. I've been doing my own podcast, so I've been asking all the questions, which has been nice for a change. Yeah, so I grew up a very active kid, and I tried soccer even though I didn't want to at first. My mom took me to my first practice and I cried on the way, but eventually I loved it and was glad she took me. So I did rec soccer for a while also simultaneously trying other things like gymnastics. I did ballet for a little bit. I also have an older brother, and we were always just active outside playing, doing baseball, tackle football, capture the flag, foursquare, tetherball, all these amazing fun games from the 90s. And I just love moving. I love competing and playing sports and being active. And I think I just naturally developed into a well-rounded athlete. And it just helped my soccer game a lot in terms of my speed and agility and being able to be aggressive and comfortable with contact and comfortable with getting in a lot of different environments and being able to make fast decisions. I think all that variety young gave me a lot of good reactive ability and just awareness of my surroundings and being able to think quickly. So, yeah, I did rec soccer until I was about age 13. And then age 14, I started to get more serious about it and switched to one of the best travel teams in the state. And that's when I took it upon myself to start doing more serious training and like really seriously considering playing in college. I didn't really seriously consider it until I was in high school,
Uh-huh.
and I was looking at Division I programs, getting recruited by Big Ten and ACC schools. And while that was amazing, I ended up at Johns Hopkins because I liked the size of the school. I liked the academics. I liked the team culture and the girls when I had done my official visit. So I ended up going there, and it's a top 25 Division III program. And I went in, ended up starting as a freshman, started all 4 years, and really was able to make an impact on the program. And I had a blast. I think going that route was a good decision for me because I did want to play and contribute to the team. And I loved every second of it. I think it was one of the most fun parts of my life from a sports standpoint. And I definitely miss that time. But now I am coaching full time with speed, strength, and conditioning because I saw what all that did in my journey as a young athlete. I did do strength training all through middle school, high school, and college. And there were so many performance benefits, but also just mental benefits. And I just want to be able to share that with the athletes I coach now because they need it for sport, they need it for their overall health, especially when they're done playing. And I still train today. I still lift weights. I'm training for a track meet in 2 months as a 60-meter sprinter. So I'm still being competitive because I just love sports and working out and being active. So it's been a journey and it continues, I guess.
You said a lot of great things there because I'm going to try to nitpick. One thing I thought was really, really cool is you were talking about how you got recruited by other big schools, but you chose to go to a smaller school. And I think that says something because kids nowadays look at it as Division I or bust or one double A or bust. And then sometimes they get Division III letters, Division IIs, JUCO, and they go, I'm too good for this. And so that's what they focus on. Us as coaches, I'm talking from like a football, basketball perspective, we have to be truthful and we have to tell them in a nice way, like, this may not work. And then they fail. Then they're like, well, I'm too good for Division III. And then they just don't do it. And I think it says something about the big time school is not always the right thing. Because one thing we say is find the right fit. What's your major? What do you want to do? Do you like the area? Is the school good? Do you like the coach when you visit? Do you like the players? And I think that speaks volume that that's not always the route to go. It can't be Division I or bust. It can be anything. There's so much opportunity out there, which I love.
Yeah, I think that's a really great message. And, look, I get it. I mean, now there's social media in the mix and there's that comparison. I mean, it's not just kids that deal with it, but even us adults, we look around at other people in our industry or other families and couples or whatever, and we're always comparing. And I think it's human nature. But I think for athletes, you have to really come back to your own journey and you have to get real with yourself, with where you belong based on your level. And I always tell athletes, like, maybe get to an ID camp to see if you fit
Mhm.
that level, or maybe look at the current roster of that D1 team. Are they all
Yep.
national team players or high school All-Americans? And if that's not you, then that might not be your level and the personnel that the coach wants. but there is always a fit for you for your level. You also, parents especially, have to look at what you can afford because athletic scholarships are few and far between.
Yep.
It's a very small percentage that you get full rides at the D1 levels nowadays, and then the Division 3 levels, you're really only allowed academic scholarships. So you have to really consider your financial position, and then yeah, also your major, because what you study is going to take you further than your sport. But if you're lucky enough to make it to the professional level, it will still end one day,
Mhm.
whether that's in your mid 30s or early 40s. And you still kind of have to fall back on your studies or something else that you had going on. So you can't put your full identity in your sport and just getting the college scholarship or playing D1. You have to have other things going on in your life. And I think young athletes need to realize that, especially within this culture of, D1 or bust, or I'm going to specialize within one sport young and do it my whole life. Well, what else do you have to fall back on? What other passions and hobbies and skill sets are you building to be a well-rounded athlete, a well-rounded human, so that it's more sustainable through your sports career and then your regular career, because that will happen one day. So
Yeah.
there's so much to unpack with all that.
Yeah, that was the other you kinda, pushed it forward a little bit. You're talking about when you were growing up, you did other things, and you just said it, like, specializing. That's another thing that's happening because 'cause I've been coaching high school for 15 years, and over the 15 years where I grew up even, you played 3 sports, like, you did 3 sports, you did something in the summer, you went to your workout, you're playing basketball, you're going to play softball, you're doing whatever in the summer, just being a kid, and that's just what you did, and then the more I've coached and then I moved up to the suburbs of Chicago, more kids are now specializing, like, I'm just going to do baseball. I'm just going to do soccer. I'm just gonna do basketball. And what I'm seeing with high school athletes, I'm sure you are, is that then when they're done playing high school, they don't get what they thought they were going to get from specializing, right? Because again, it's that Division 1 or bust. If I just focus on the said sport, I'm going to go play at, I'm going to play Texas baseball. I'm going to go play Alabama football. I'm going to go play wherever, and it doesn't happen. Then they regret it. Then you see the regret. And me being the jerk I am, I said, well, I tried to tell you that you could go play baseball here or football here or whatever and still do all these other things. And we also try to tell them if you want to play college baseball and you don't have the scholarship yet, playing other sports will help you get recruited because they're going to see you compete in something else. They're going to see how you handle this, and it just helps you. And I really think it hurts. Unless you get a scholarship as a sophomore in high school, don't specialize. I've seen that. I've seen a baseball kid gets full ride at Wake Forest sophomore year. He was projected third round pick in major leagues. Cool. He didn't play football anymore. He didn't do this. I was like, I understand that. But everybody else, it hurts their physical abilities. And I just believe doing everything helps you in all other sports, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think just that variety really young it's so critical during those very impactful years in cognitive development and then physical literacy, and being able to build coordination and balance and stability and fire all the muscle groups and make sure there's not an imbalance or there's overuse going on. And I always like to compare it to the education system. Would you want your fifth grader to only learn science starting from fifth grade and then for the rest of their academic career? No. You also
Right.
teach them English, how to read, how to write, how to have communication skills, because say they want to be a doctor when they grow up and they're just
Hmm.
like, okay, I only need to learn science. Well, doctors need more skills than just understanding the body. They
Hmm.
also need to have business skills because they deal with insurance companies. A lot of them own their own practices. They need to have communication skills because doctors need to be able to talk to the patient and empathize with them. So it's the same thing. You don't want to like narrow your focus so much. You want to have that broad range of skills, so that you're better at your main craft, if that makes sense.
Right. Because The other thing we battle with at high school is some kids will stop when they're seniors because they kind of see the writing on the wall of like, I may not even get playing time on a basketball court. I may not get this. By the time they're seniors, they kind of stop. Those kids I still tell to play sports, but I get why. But when they're freshmen or sophomores or even younger, like some are in 8th grade, 7th grade, and they go, this is all I'm going to do. It's a problem. And I also think it's the travel sports. I have nothing against like opportunities, but some people in the travel sports areas say things to these kids to keep them in because they make a lot of money. Like a lot of money is being made in these travel sports, which does not do well for the kids. Because then what if that kid doesn't go Division 1 or doesn't even play college baseball? They look back and they go, we spent all this money, all this time. I was told this as a 7th grader, 8th grader. I'll never forget, I was coaching at a high school. Our quarterback did baseball in the summer. We had a 7-on-7, and he said, hey, I'm going to not go to baseball practice to go to the 7-on-7. I'll make up the baseball later. He told the baseball coach. We said, cool. The baseball coach doesn't play him for their next like 3 games. And he goes, why? And he goes, well, you didn't come to practice, so you don't care about this baseball stuff, so I'm not playing you. Then the guy calls our head football coach and says, how dare you make him skip baseball to go to 7-on-7, and starts screaming. And it's like, what are you doing? Like, I don't get it. Just some people aren't meant for it.
Mm-hmm. I think another thing that not a lot of people are talking about is the statistic where most kids drop out of sport by ages 12 or 13 because it became no longer fun because of burnout or having that travel sport year-round model pushed on them too young, that it eventually became an obligation. They didn't have time to actually be kids, to have sleepovers, to go to the movies, or even go to grandma's birthday party. I think with those younger ages, it should be carefree. It should be joyful. It should always be fun. They should have seasons off to try other things and see if they like other sports over others. If you specialize so young, then you'll never know what the kid's true passion is, because by the time they're 9, you're like, their sport is soccer. We're only doing soccer. But maybe they would have loved softball and been an amazing softball athlete, and maybe they would have gotten a D1 scholarship in that sport. You would have never known because you never tried it. So I think we have to just remember to let these kids explore young and develop that joy, develop that passion, and not have it as such a serious obligation before age 12, before age 13, because those are the years, like once we complete the growth spurt, especially in girls, where we should start to choose one sport and specialize, because schedules get too crazy and we can't juggle too many sports. But younger, try all the things and see what you really like.
And mentally, I know for me, when I did 3 sports, football was number 1, but I mean, it was done. You're sad. A week goes by. There's nothing better than getting away and starting a new sport, like go right into basketball, like you're doing something different. And so you're also getting better for football doing basketball, or like some of my friends wrestled. And then when basketball was over, you're kind of sad. You get the week off or 2. Then you're like, oh, right into baseball, right into track. There's nothing better than like, oh, I could just do something else. And then in the summer, you kind of do all of it, like go to a shootout, go to lifts, go to this. So you're doing constantly something different. And I think that's good till you become an adult and you want to do the same thing every day when you go to work. Like, let the kids do this. Then when they get older, then it becomes like every day you got to do some things the same. But as a kid, let them do all that stuff. And some kids just, I try to get them all to play multiple sports, and times have changed a little bit. That's not what's cool. You said social media, like the social media stuff. Like, is it cool for me to post this? Do I not want to look bad because it's going to end up on social media? Somebody's going to videotape it, and then they're going to make fun of me. And it's like, we all didn't grow up with that. So I know we all don't quite understand. Like, some of us are like, just brush it off. But we didn't grow up in it. We're just adapting to it too. So mentally, these kids are afraid to fail sometimes.
Now, I'm curious, how did other sports help with your football? Did you feel that you were building good agility from basketball, or what was it?
Yeah, I felt in basketball that I was learning how to compete in a different way for a competing level. Because in football, you can hit, do whatever. In basketball, you hit, you get a foul, then you get another foul, you foul out. So you learned how to move. My speed got better because you're constantly running. Now, I could tell like Coach Holler, my basketball practice, and he'd probably throw up like, hey, we're going to run all these sprints, but I still got faster. My footwork was getting better. Um, your hand-eye coordination gets better because you're constantly moving your head around, looking. You're trying to catch the basketball. You're trying to make a move. So I know for me that helped with that. Going to baseball, you're learning hand-eye coordination of watching the ball. You're working on power. You have to work on speed in a short distance running to bases. Um, I can't, and then I threw shot put and disc. That was just more for like footwork. You got to learn a new skill. You're mentally challenging yourself because in football, I was an offensive lineman. We're put into uncomfortable positions. Like a stance is not normal. Firing off and hitting people like that is not normal. You're in an uncomfortable situation. So to put myself in those, I think helped with that. So when I come back to football, it's, oh, Steve, your feet look a little bit better. Oh, your eyes, you're seeing stuff quicker. And so it all worked together for me.
That's really cool. And also, basketball is such a small space.
Yeah.
So you have to get really comfortable with reacting in those closed spaces and getting comfortable with that contact.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just crazy because I look at all sports and see all the training online, and even the football speed and agility trainers out there. It's like, how does this translate? Like,
Mm-hmm.
just I don't know if you've seen it, but it's just a lot of the tap dancing, the sped up videos of kids just going through these agility rings. And it's just really sad because it's not as, it doesn't translate as much as it would a kid trying basketball in such a small space and having to lateral shuffle quick or move their feet quick and react and be around all this chaos. It's just, if a kid's in a one-on-one setting doing these agility rings, it's just not really serving any benefit except making it appear they're working hard, or it's translating to football. And the soccer community has the same types of trainings, and it's just really sad because it doesn't translate for actual competition.
Well, that's kind of why I am intrigued, like with your book and when I've seen you things post of speed training. But before that, I was old school. Like the things you're talking about, that's all I knew was this is how you lift. We have to do these drills because that's what I knew. And when I go to clinics and other things, I still saw other people doing those things. And I would just brush off the college coach because I'm like, well, look who you're working with. Like, I'm not working with those athletes until my buddy, I think it was 2019 or 18 maybe, said, hey, have you seen Tony Holler, Brad Dixon, like this stuff? And I was like, I mean, I've seen their names. I mean, I don't know. And he explained it to me, and I said, this is ridiculous. Like, I'm going to brush this off. And then I think during COVID, he got certified. He's a big, he's certified in track, he's certified whatever. And he goes, Steve, I think you should look at this stuff. So I look at it again, and I go, yeah, some of the speed stuff's cool, but like, how does this, like, where's the bags? Where's this? Where's the high knees? Where's this? Like, where's, like, I'm used to all this. Why aren't they running during practice? I don't get it. What do you mean you can't hit in practice? What are you talking about? And then he told me RPR. He showed me. I was like, what are you talking about? And I didn't get it. And I didn't want to get it. I was like, that's cool, but that's not what I know. Till like 2021, like right after COVID started to get away, a light bulb went off. And I was like, wait a minute. What if there's something to this? Because the high school I'm at now, I got there in summer of 2020. Illinois sports got kicked to the spring because of COVID. So we did all 3 seasons in a 6-month time frame, which was ridiculous. Then we get to the summer and they said, go back to normal. So now we're doing basketball camps, football camps, whatever. That fall, I have never had so many injuries on a football field in 15 years. And I didn't fathom, I couldn't understand why. And that's when the light bulb went off. I was like, wait a minute. Maybe they weren't meant to play in that 6 month time frame. Go back to the summer. Was there a way to do this? I start researching it. And that's like you said, then I'm starting to think like, does this drill have anything to do with the sport? Does it have anything at all? What's the benefit? And it just clicked. And so I had the podcast. I reached out to Tony Holler. He apparently lived 15 minutes down the street from me at the time. So I was like, hold on a second. Then I start reaching out to people. And it just
he's a great mentor. I mean, he's always open to discuss, and he's awesome.
Mm-hmm. So I had him on. I already kind of knew some of the answers, but I told myself, I'm going to ask dumb questions. He goes, I'm prepared to answer your dumb questions. Like, he's not afraid to. And so I'm asking these questions, and he explains it. Then I talk to Brad Dixon. I'll send him messages. Coach Moeller, he's big, and I message him all the time. And Chris Corfus, it's a small world. He coached at York High School. Our current head football coach worked with him for 1 year. So when I brought this to my head coach, he goes, I've seen this somewhere before. I think it was like in 2011 or 12. Like, Jesus, I've seen this before. And he goes, wait a minute, Chris Corfus. I said, yeah, Chris Corfus coaches a half hour from us. Like, we could go talk to him. And it just all clicked. And now I'm trying to get other coaches to buy into it where, what do you mean we're not supposed to hit? Where's, like, can we do this drill? And I go, but what does that have to do with playing point guard in basketball? What does this have to do with playing goalie at soccer? What does this have to do with, there's a time and place for some of these drills, and some of them you don't even need to do. It doesn't make sense.
The one thing I love about Tony Holler's work is he just simplifies everything.
Yeah.
And I'm really on board with that because speed doesn't have to be complicated. It's very simple, but you have to be consistent with it. And not a lot of people are willing to keep showing up to improve speed. And I'll give an example. So I'm currently training to compete at the USA Track and Field World Championships in 2 months. I started training 6 months out, and I sprint 3 times a week consistently. And even then, you get just such incremental improvements over time. And there's some weeks where you're not getting a new PR, or your times are just like a roller coaster. It's just up and down. But when you zoom out and look at the macro picture from when you started month 1 to month 6, and you actually see that big improvement, you're like, wow, speed, I just really need to stick with. And just coming back to just getting rid of like the gadgets and gizmos, I thought speed was hurdles and ladders and making it look flashy online. But when you really simplify speed, it's getting from point A to point B as fast as possible. And I always, whenever I present to soccer teams and coaches, I always put up on my slide a point A and a point B. And I have a side by side of a ladder going from point A to point B, so a speed ladder, and then just a person sprinting. And I say, okay, who's going to get from point A to point B faster? The person tapping through the ladder or the person sprinting? And everyone's always like, oh, the person sprinting. And then I ask why. And people can't explain it. And then when I say, look, your speed is all about your stride length and your stride rate. You need to get from point A to point B as fast as possible. Ladders don't train your stride length and stride rate. And then that's when it starts to click for people. And I think just the soccer community, even the football community, they're just not being simplified, this information, and they just need to be educated. I really don't blame people for being stuck in their ways and doing the fancy stuff, because maybe they just don't know. And I think the more we can educate and get people on board, it will begin to click. But then you have another camp of people that still do the gadgets and gizmos because they just want the following. They want the viral videos. And those are the people I encourage athletes and parents to really see through, because you can really tell when these videos are all about the flash. I mean, they speed up the athletes, they use the editing app where it makes them look faster than they are, they put the rap music in the background, and it's like, okay, is this about my athlete getting better, or is this about their coach growing their following?
Right. That's why I like Tony Holler stuff, because it was literally on their track in their school, and he's like, "Here you go. This is what it looks like." Brad Dixon, he's like, "We don't have an indoor track. We use the hallway." So he videotaped the hallway, and he's like, "This is what we have." And
Yeah, we run sprints on my neighborhood street out here because
awesome.
we don't have a track nearby, and yeah, we just do it out on the blacktop and we make do with what we have. But we've got some serious improvements from that, and we just show up and do it.
Awesome. I tried that a little bit, because when I presented this to the head football coach, he was like, "I'm on board. I want to change." He goes, "But I'm also going to push back on it because I'm stuck in my ways." And he told me ahead of time, he's like, "There's going to be times you're going to say something. I'm going to be like, 'What the hell are you talking about, Steve?' And I'm going to be like, but I held in the spring. I said, 'Guys, I don't care if you play baseball after school. We can still do it. Like, still work on this.'" And I tried to videotape it just in the track. I'd be like, "Hey, it's 7 in the morning. We're here before school. We're on the track. We're doing this." And what started to happen was people made fun of them. They were like, "What is this pogos? What is this? You're running over wickets. Why are they hugging themselves as they run over wickets? Why are they doing airplanes?" And people made fun of them. So I had kids stop coming because they were like, "You're posting this on social media and they're making fun of us." And I said, but I'm like, "Why do you care about somebody else when you're up working? Like, why would you care that?" But again, I don't understand the mindset of what they're going through in social media, but it's still like, but then once you start timing them, you said, "Hey, you started at 19 miles per hour. Now you're at 20.5." And they're like, "Oh, okay." So then you're like, maybe there is a method to this. And then, like you said, some coaches are like, "Oh, you're going to work on speed today. The ladders are back there. This is back there. This is back there." And I was like, "Nope, I don't need, I need cones and wickets." "What do you mean you need cones and wickets?" I was like, "Yeah, sometimes I need an aiming point. Sometimes I need them to get here. Wickets, just run over them on non-speed days, just learn how to move." And they're like, "You don't need ladders?" I was like, "Nah, I don't need that." "Do you need agility bags?" "Nah, I don't need that."
No, and that's the beauty of it. If you don't have equipment or access to equipment, you can still really train speed and get a lot of work done. And look, this isn't to say don't use ladders. I think some people would argue, well, it can work on like coordination, and yeah, it could. And if you have time to use them, then by all means, but you don't need to do it for the full hour session. I would say you don't need to do it longer than 10 minutes. And for me personally, I have limited time with my athletes. Some girls I see just once a week in season. Some of them I'm lucky enough to see twice, but even that is still not a lot. So within the 2 hours that they see me a week, I'm not doing ladders because I'm better off doing a full dynamic warm up with the pogo hops,
Mhm.
the box jumps, our leaping and bounding drills, working on our arm swings and our quality high knees and power skips. And after we've done that, 10 minutes has gone by, and then we're getting into our sprints, and then we also lift at the end. So
Mhm.
it's like if I have just 2 times a week, I'm going to focus on what I feel is most bang for buck. Maybe if I had more time, I would do ladders. I don't even know if I would, but I'm just trying to get a specific adaptation out of my athletes, and that's I want them to become more twitchy. I want them to be able to reach top speeds and also work on improving their acceleration. So I don't see a need for ladders within the context of my program.
Right. I'm kind of the same way. I thought about once in a while using them just to mix it up and have something not fun but different. Like, basketball is really hard to do sprint training and this stuff, because you might play a game, practice, play again. So it's like you just had a speed day. Here's your X factor. Here's your speed. But what if you play 2 games Friday, Saturday? Like, it's really tough. So sometimes I get fun with it. I go, "Hey, find a line. I'm gonna blow the whistle. You're gonna hop over the line back and forth as high as you can go." Okay, cool. Now we're gonna go fast over our feet for like 10 seconds. And I don't do it all the time. It's just once in a while. of like getting their ankles and feet, because basketball relies a lot on the feet and ankles. But we still do the same thing. Like every day, I'm like, okay, pogos as high as we can go. Hey, we're going to do assisted pogos. Hey, we're going to do broad jumps. But I'm the freshman program, so this, like, the other programs don't do it. So sometimes those kids are like, what are you guys doing? And I'm like, we're learning how to jump. We're going to jump higher than you. And they're sophomores. So I bet they will jump higher than you. I bet they will have better running mechanics, because in basketball, you really need that to like get up and down and move. And, but coaches are starting to look at it and they say, oh, so you really don't need some of this equipment? I'm like, nope, this is all we're doing. And injuries, I think back, I'm like, this will also help us get stronger in the weight room as long as we adapt it. Because I think back to my injuries. I have a bad knee now. My back's messed up, shoulders. I'm looking back, and I don't blame our head coaches. That's what they knew. They knew to lift as heavy as possible. They knew this, and that's all they knew. There was, between I was in high school from 2006 to 2009. That's what they knew. Cool. Now I'm like, let's make sure you don't have the same knee, ankle, back, shoulder problems that I have.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's another thing we can touch on is just the injury reduction benefits of consistent sprint exposure and really firing the hamstrings more than a lot of these young athletes are able to do within their practices. I don't know if it's the same in the football community, but for soccer practices, some teams aren't able to use the whole field space because clubs will have another team on one half of the field. Sometimes there's 3 teams at a time. So they're really only practicing within like a 30 by 30 space, maybe even less sometimes. So they're not able to reach over 40-yard, 50-yard sprints. And that's really not helping build their hamstrings and that tissue tolerance. So since we've started implementing sprinting, especially in season, a lot of these girls have stayed very healthy, no season ending injuries for a couple years now. And yeah, I really think they just need that sprint exposure to become more robust as athletes.
Yeah, football, you usually use half the field, because if varsity is doing offense, maybe your sophomore JV are doing defense. But like, I'll give you an example. Our high school, we're fortunate enough. We have a turf main field. We have like a turf practice field, and then there's grass. So what happens is soccer will take a field, we'll take a field and use the grass field. So grass freshmen go on, then the main field, this side of the 50s varsity, this side of the 50s sophomore JV. So you only have like that 50 yards. So you could still get things done, but it's still not what you need. So that's why I liked doing like a sprint workout, whatever you want to call it, before practice, and then trying to get them to understand, like, today's a sprint day, so we can move, but we don't want to constantly be sprinting as fast as we can go, but you still have those moments. X factor days, because I call them X factor or work days, make it a 10-yard, 15-yard radius where they're not up to max speed, but they're working hard. We get a break, we do a halftime. And I don't think we really had this year. I mean, it was the first year really doing it. We didn't really have like soft tissue damages. There was a couple like, bone stuff, but no concussions. This was like one of the first times in football nobody had even close to a concussion. Nobody. I mean, you might have a rolled up ankle, which I can't control. In basketball right now, a lot of the freshman football players did this. So when they came to my basketball practice, they said, are we doing RPR? Are we doing this? I was like, oh yeah, it ain't going nowhere. I haven't had soft tissue damages yet. I haven't had this. I have kids not wanting to come out of a basketball game. They're like, I feel okay. Like, I don't need to come out. So there are benefits, but then it kind of relates to weightlifting. Like, we can't kill ourselves in the weight room. This all works together. And our injuries went down. And then I'm not certain muscle groups on the kids like, man, I'm really tight today. I'm like, hold on a second. And you work on it for a second. They go, what'd you just do? And you're like, I'm like, you're good. Like, I got you to where you can move again. And they're like, are you a magician? I'm like, no, it's just things aren't as complicated as we make them out to be.
Yeah.
And then our trainers are like, "Are you the new trainer?" And I was like, "No, they still go to you. I'm just here to help." But the trainers have bought into it too. They like, "I've seen this. What is this?" I show them, and they're like, "Oh." So now they're kind of into it now of the RPR muscle groups and fixing the kids and getting them to work, and it's all coming together and it's working, and it's awesome. It's just awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I think I just think sprinting has so many benefits, and not just for sports and injury reduction, but just overall health and longevity and continuing to stay fast twitch as you get older. And I did a podcast with one of my friends, Cynthia, who's an Olympian, and she's just turned 50 years old, and she's like breaking track world records and running faster than she was as a D1 college athlete because she continued to sprint and get those inputs to her body. And she looks like she's like 30. So it's definitely something to be said about sprinting and longevity. But it's a very powerful exercise. As Tony Holler says, it's one of the most extreme things the human body can do is run a max speed sprint. So yeah, I think it's good for everyone.
Before you leave, because I know we're on a time limit, you train athletes kind of with the sprinting, with everything else for soccer. Some soccer coaches believe they have to run a lot because in soccer they run the whole time, right? Like, I think that's why I never played soccer, because I was the big kid. I'm like, that's too much running. I'm not involved in that. I'm not doing that. Would they look at you training athletes or some of these soccer coaches like, what the hell are they doing, right? Like, you have to be running. You have to be running laps around, and that's what gets you in shape because we constantly have to move. Like, is there pushback from people like that still? Like, they might look at sprinting and say, this doesn't translate to the game.
Yeah, you still get some pushback from people because I think in the soccer community, they think they need to run extra conditioning and laps, especially, or go for like a long 1 to 2 mile slow jog. And like my argument with that is that that's only training your slow twitch muscle fibers. So if your goal as a soccer player is to become the fastest you can be, then that might be taking away from those speed gains. So you really need to consider that. If you do need extra conditioning in the off season when games cut back and you're not going to as many tournaments, then I like to do more speed endurance runs or tempo runs, but I don't like to do more of like that long distance, the steady state type stuff. I like to do more of like the intervals and then just manipulate the work to rest times and eventually shorten those rest times over time and have less recovery to really build their conditioning. But most of the times, especially since we started using GPS, we've been finding that a lot of these soccer players are already getting enough conditioning within all their practices and games. So the missing component is that speed exposure. And like Mike Boyle says, you want to really think of it as buckets and which buckets need more filling. So yeah, speed is one of those qualities that we found in the GPS. You might have some girls who don't play as many minutes, so they might be playing maybe like 10 to 15 minutes a half. They might need a little bit extra conditioning, but sometimes soccer coaches are really good at making up for that at practice and giving those girls that increased load. But those who aren't good at doing that, then it's really up to me to add that into their program. So I've had to really just maintain communication with my players on kind of what's going on at practice and what loads they're getting. But for the most part, if you just explain it to people, they eventually understand. We can't just assume our athletes know like the difference between a speed and conditioning workout. Some athletes just think it's all the same. But I always try to tell them you want to think of it in different gears, like driving a stick shift car. Speed is your fastest gear, and then conditioning is gear 2 or 3. So it's totally separate gear, which means you have to train it totally separately in a different session. So when I simplify it that way, then people get it a little bit better. And parents too, when you give them those analogies, they appreciate it and they understand, because they're not educated on it either, and they're not really looking into the research as well. So it's kind of our job to communicate that with them.
I like simple because I'm a dumb country boy. So when people explain it very simply, I'm like, I understand what you're saying. That's why I
Yeah.
like the way Tony Holler explained it to me. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
like it's so obvious that you're mad that you never thought of it before.
Yep.
Another big thing people have a hard time with is time off and breaks. So, like for football, I'm still trying to get all the coaches on board, and like, so I'll look, oh, they're doing up downs as punishment or whatever, and we're having conversations. You watch my O line, there's times where the helmets are off or walking through things. It's like break time. We're not doing anything. In the middle of practice, we have a 5-minute halftime where they sit down and do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I convinced the head coach, let's do nothing on Saturdays. Let's do nothing on Sundays. Even Monday, let's just do a sprint workout and then do nothing. And I guarantee somebody would watch that and say, what are you doing? And Tony Holler really convinced me of, think about weightlifting. Like when you're lifting, you're tearing the body. How does it grow? Well, because you rest. And sprinting and playing sports. And then Brad Dixon said it perfectly because we were talking about pregame warmups. He's like, you have a ball of energy, right, Steve? And I was like, yeah. He's like, that's all the body has. Why would you take pieces of it? And then, like, it takes a while for those to come back. So you need time. So when you play Friday and that's all gone, Saturday it has to come back. Sunday it has to come back. Monday it has to come back, and it creates the ball again. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm dumb, and that's pretty smart. And he goes, no, that's the way I think of it. So time off is really hard for people too, for coaches. They don't understand it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the best way to put it. With what Tony Holler said is, sprinting's the same. Your muscles are breaking down after a workout, and the only way to build them back up is to make sure you're resting and not doing impact and heavy CNS activity. You're also nourishing your body and fueling with good food. So yeah, I think that rest is really where the gains happen, so that the next time you have a workout, it can also be a quality workout with good outputs.
Right. Right. So that's been the hard part, is convincing coaches. And I don't know if you see that, like you said, you're convincing people. And then once you explain it, they're like, okay, I got it. And some, I think, push back and go, you don't know what you're talking about. I've been doing this for 25 years. This is how it's always been done. And I think that's one of the most dangerous things to say, is this is how it's always been done. If this is how it's always been done, then you need to stop coaching, because there's things to adapt and learn. Once you start saying, well, this is how we've done it for 25 years. And maybe it's worked, because I asked Tony Holler the same question. I said, what about schools that do these things, but they win state titles, they get to the playoffs, they win regionals, they win this? They're not going to do it. I can't remember what he said. He's like, just because it works doesn't mean it's not smart, or like idiots can always do this, something funny. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. Coaches push back on it. I'm glad you're out there spreading it. You talk about in your book, which I love. I haven't gotten the second one yet. I have too many books to read, but I'll get to it. But I know you got to go. I appreciate you coming on here. Keep doing your
Thank you.
thing. Keep promoting speed workouts. Keep doing all that stuff. It's awesome. Keep doing it. Keep up your podcast. It's awesome. Keep doing it. You're doing a great job.
Thank you. Yeah, you as well. And always excited to chat about these things, and happy to come on again and talk more if you're out for it. But thanks for having me on.